Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another recommendations video. So for this one, a couple weeks ago I made a book boyfriends video and I also made a favorite women in romance novels, which was basically like a book girlfriend video. And I wanted to do something super fun and kind of twist that around, because when I made my book boyfriend plus one husband list, I was actually like picking book boyfriends that like I would want in real life to be my boyfriend, not just someone that's super hot, super sexy, lots of money, because that would be really intimidating to have in real life. So I went with people that I actually like the personality traits that the authors gave them, and I would have fun being their significant other. But that's not always why we read fantasy or fiction. A lot of times we're reading because we want a man who isn't like someone we want in real life. That leads us to a lot of bad boys. And so what I wanted to do with this video, which essentially is a bad boys video, but I wanted to call it like the anti-boyfriend video. Do you know what I mean? So like guys that I still think are sexy and more like fuckable, but not that I would want to be their significant other, because either A, it would be a lot of pressure and a lot of work, or number two, they're actually sociopaths or psychopaths, and I don't want them in my life or near my family and the father of my future children. So yeah, that led me to a lot of fun. And so a couple of these are lighter than others. There's a couple that I'm mostly like kidding, and then there's a few that I'm like, actually they should be in prison instead of this. And this was inspired by one specific man to start with. So there's this book that was recently suggested to me to read, and then I was reminded by my best friend that, hey girl, I've actually suggested you read this book 3 other times and you keep ignoring me, because the trope that it was explained to me as being was high school bully romance, and I really hate those. I'm sorry. I went through my phase like a lot of people. I've read the Devil's Night series. I've read some of the high school series I've read one by Siobhan Davis, and they were okay for a phase. But part of it is I can't stand how like young the characters are. And then once you get to older books like college and life, they're just called enemies to lovers. They're not called high school bully romance. They're just called enemies to lovers. Because what it is about high school is you're forced into proximity with this person. And so, or like, you have to answer to your parents and a principal and teachers. And so if that person who's bullying you is able to manipulate those things, they kind of have you trapped. And so it leads to almost this feeling of a captor-captive situation. Even though you're free to move around and do what you want, you're not always free up here. And so this book is called Untouchable by Sam Mariano. And this has a character named Carter Mahoney, and he is a fucking psychopath. And the opening 3 chapters of this book had me questioning why this person suggested this and why this was my best friend's like favorite book she's read in the last little bit. But oh, I should have trusted them. So as I do with some of these, I'm going to go in a little bit of deep to explain this, because I think that a lot of you, if you read the first 3 chapters, would throw this book down and run away. And I was close to it. If not for almost hate reading the next couple chapters, to be like, who the fuck recommended this to me? I'm sorry. I love you now. I love you. I do. But at the time I was like, is this a joke? Like, is someone wanting me to hate on the book, right? Because that's fair. Sometimes we want people to share our anger. But this isn't a video about guys that I hate. It's about books about bad boys I'd like to fuck. So let's go on and talk about Carter here real quick. So this is a high school bully romance. The guy's sexy, captain of the football team, QB. That's all you want to know. Skip to the next picture or the next book I hold up, because I won't talk as in-depth about those. But because this video is inspired by Carter, I'm going to talk about him just a little bit, okay? So Carter, all right, how am I going to go at this? So we have Zoe Ellis, okay? So we have this girl who she had recently been assaulted by a guy on the football team who's not Carter. But she is a strong ass bitch, okay? That's the thing I want to say too. One of the reasons I don't like bully romances is I feel like the girls just let these guys do this to them. And you're like, you're in high school. Why are you putting up with this, right? But this girl already had her like Me Too moment, okay? She told on this prick for feeling her up. He had made a move on her and she thought he was cute, but he wouldn't stop when she said no. And for her, she's like, not gonna go with this. And so she told. She stepped up and she said what he did to her. And that boy, Jake, got kicked off the football team for his entire senior year. Because this happened at like a party over the summer or at the beginning of the year or something. And the whole school is pissed at her. And she finds lube in her locker. She finds signs held up. People have like thrown eggs at her house, left her as like, they've just left horrible things in her mailbox. They are hating on her for having turned this kid in for kissing her and groping her. They're like, oh my God, it's not like he got raped or anything. What's the big deal? But she's ready to endure it. She's like, you know what? If this stops another girl from being hurt, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it and it's gonna be fine. Well, one day at school, she gets cornered by Jake, his friend Carter, and their friend Shane, and she gets taken to an empty classroom. That's also a thing in high school bully romances. There always seems to be empty classrooms with the lights off where we can just do things to people, consensually and non-consensually. And this leads to, first, Jake strips her top and bra off and is fondling her and is saying, wow, if I'm going to be kicked off the football team for this long, I should get something out of it. And then she just like will not back down. She will not back down, even though she's in this room with these three guys who are bigger than her and they are pushing her around and assaulting her. She will not back down. And this gets Carter really hot, okay? He gets really turned on by how much she is fighting them and how much she just will not back down. And so he wants to see her submit to him. And it's like all this gets awakened in him at once. So obviously he had psychopathic tendencies before, but it's just all revved up by her. And so he ends up threatening to rape her or else give him a blowjob. Okay? Yeah. This is our hero of the book. Okay, not a hero, a bad person. This is a bad person we're meeting. And she knows the only way out of this room without being like hurt is to give in to this and say what he wants her to say and promise not to tell anyone. And so she does it. She gives him a blowjob and he lets her go. And then she stays home from school the next day and he shows up at her house with soup, with fucking soup, and talks to her mother and asks if she's okay. And then she walks out to his car with him and he asks her on a date. A fucking date. The balls on this kid. Asks her on a date. And she's like, are you out of your mind? And he feels her up against his car. Her mom is totally cool with it because he's so charming and sweet. He's reminding her, he's like, nobody is going to believe this. Like, just let me fuck you and I'll get you out of my system and this will be done. And she's like, no, it's not going to happen. And then he continues to pursue her and eventually threaten her best friend with being assaulted if she doesn't come over and help him out instead. And this is the intro to him. All right? Okay, I'm telling you, this is the intro to this man. And I fucking love him. I know, I'm twisted. Obviously, there's a lot more to this story. This story is amazing because she finds a way to not only like be intrigued by him and not in, I'm telling you, there are elements of this that remind me of a captor-captive scenario because there's nowhere she can go and no one who will believe her. And so she kind of does what you see a woman do in a captor-captive book where she's like, okay, well, I'm going to find a way to make this work because I mean, I might as well get some pleasure out of this. I might as well see if we can work if I have no other choice. If this psychopath is obsessed with me, I need to get something out of it too, because otherwise my life is ruined. And it's kind of it's an amazing story, because obviously that's not enough to explain to you why I like it, because I've just described something super traumatic and dark and crazy. But there's a reason why this book has such a high rating, and there's a reason why people are fascinated. Like, the author sets up the craziest ass person ever, right? She does this within 3 pages. This isn't a case, or not 3 pages, 3 chapters at the beginning of this book. This isn't a case of an author trying to make a crazy man sexy to you. This isn't about, you know, captor-captive fantasy. This is about, like, actually kind of analyzing, like, why this person's being like this, and what it is about her and him that their dynamic works so well, and kind of trying to lead him to a way that, like, well, what if someone wanted to be in this relationship with you consensually and then do non-consensual things? So really they end up talking about what non-consensual or consensual non-consent is. And I found it fascinating, all right? And the author's doing it on purpose, and I think she does a great job. And I think this is also a character that it isn't about saving them, okay? Because Carter, he's an 18-year-old child who is on the verge of being worse than he is. That's the thing too. We're seeing him at almost the point where he's snapped, and he's with this girl who's like, I could take this guy on and we could find a way that we work together, or I could let him go and someday he might hurt somebody, or it might not be the right person. I don't know. It was fascinating, and I spent 10 minutes talking about this book, but I told you, Carter inspired this book. I don't want him as my boyfriend, but he was fascinating to read about. And if you like captor-captive books, if you like high school bully romances, if you like a really dark hero, a dark romance that starts with an assault and goes to just fascinating. And I like that, like, this guy has trauma in his past. There is reasons why he's like this, but they're never excuses. Like, the author never says, oh, well, Zoe should just forgive him for what he's done to her because of trauma. And I really respected that and liked it, and it made this book amazing to me of where it goes. So give this book a try, because it's fascinating. Okay, let's move along. Let's move right along. Let's do the other captives I have, just to get them out of the way. Like I said, I won't talk as long about these because a lot of them I have spoken at length about. So we have Julian from Twist Me. This is a classic captive, which is everything that actually it is. And we have this girl named Nora who she catches the eye of a what is he? I forgot. An arms dealer named Julian. And he stalks her, and once she graduates high school, he kidnaps her and takes her to his private island with only her and a bodyguard and him, and he turns her into a sex slave and then makes her his drug king, his queen. I don't know how else to describe it. And he's twisted as hell, and I love it. Anna Zares writes a lot of men like this. Julian is one that I can honestly tell you that I hated him from start to finish. He never wins me over at all. This is a case of we watch Nora twist and bend to fit him. There's no real meeting in the middle between them. He is, I have taken over your life. I have the money and the power to do it. No one can save you. The governments work with me. Your family can't save you. You belong to me. That's it. This is full dominion, and it is tough. This is the first captive book that I read, and I was so twisted up about it. I couldn't look away. This entire series is on Audible Escape if you'd prefer to listen to it, but Julian belongs on the baddest boy lists, and I never warm up to him. I never warm up to him because even when they are in full love with each other, it's straight up Stockholm Syndrome in this. You think the Beast does that to Belle? Read this. Holy shit balls. Julian's the worst. Because he doesn't change and bend. She has to do it all to find peace with her life. Because she's never going to get away. She can never leave, never get away, never have anything else. So I must adapt and change to fit this man or be miserable, because nothing's gonna happen. So, would not bring him home to mama. Would not recommend. All right, we'll do, I got another captive in Remo Falcone. Holy crap. I love this book. I love this series. Remo has one of the coolest character arcs of a series I've ever seen. Sorry, this book is shiny. I'm gonna turn it this way. Remo, we meet him in the first series by Cora Riley. We meet him in Bound by Vengeance when we are in the middle of someone else's love story, and then we see him throughout the rest of that series. We hear a lot of bad things about him, and we actually see the kidnapping of Serafina from someone else's point of view. We see the things that are done to her, and we really are like, holy crap, this man is evil, there's no good to him, because we're seeing him through the eyes of a different mafia family. We're seeing him through someone else's eyes. I was so excited to read this book, because I'm like, obviously, if this is his romance with Serafina, that I'm gonna get another point of view about what's happening. And before we get to this book, we are getting to see what is happening with him that's been happening parallel up to the point where this happens. So we've been hearing all these horrible things about him in the other series, and then when you read books 1 and 2 in this, you're starting to see that there's more to him than meets the eye. And then we get to see the kidnapping of Serafina from his point of view and from her point of view, and the things that work out why he's not the most evil person. And actually all the familias are messed up because they're all mafia families and none of them are great. But Remo's is so much more wild because the other families are so restricted and so held with an iron fist with their traditions, and Remo took over after like blowing up his father's life and just, you know, wiping out all the old guard. And so he's made this new kingdom, and there are still rules, like you still don't cross him, but things are a lot more out in the open and loose, and there's more room for change and growth than Serafina ever could have hoped for or thought to see. Remo is not a sweet, sensitive little snowflake. He definitely is not. None of these men are. Oh my word. And he has plans for Serafina that have nothing to do with what she wants. But there comes a point, there's a push and a shove where he is gonna have to decide, like, do I want this woman to love me or do I want a slave? And I think he makes the right decision, but I still wouldn't want to bring him home to mama. Maybe he could use some time with my mama, that's for sure. I'll talk real quick about this one, but we can't forget the king asshole of them all, the primordial. He's not primordial. There's a different primordial, but Lothar. From Lothar by Kresley Cole. Yep, he's a kidnapper too. He not only wants to kidnap Elizabeth, he wants to rip her soul out of her body so his evil vampire queen can take control of her body and give him vampire babies and be his queen. And Elizabeth has to do what she has to do to stick around, including using her body, using whatever sexual wiles that she has for this, 23-year-old woman to woo a 1,000-year-old vampire. And he ain't nice. And even once he is in love with her, he's still very controlling and wants everything to be his way and isn't going to bend no matter what. But Lothar's pretty awesome too. He's an evil vampire. He drinks to death, so he has red eyes, which are like hard to see, but they're on the cover of this. I actually don't find the pale ones too sexy. I just don't. It's the one thing about the vampires I can't get in. I like the tanned golden skin deliciousness a little bit better, but it's good. Lothar, definitely wouldn't bring him home to mama. All right, let's dip to, nope, let's keep going. I also here have, let me look up his name again too, sorry. Enrico. So here's the thing. Enrico starts out as someone I would want to bring home to mama. He's a police officer in Italy, but surprise, his dad and his grandfather run the mafia there. And so when his father and his grandfather die in a hit, he's forced to take over the family. So he's forced to leave his job as a stand-up police officer and become the head of a drug trafficking, sex trafficking, crime family. And this is really unfortunate for him because the same week that all happens, he'd met clandestinely Olivia, who's meant to be his true love. And after their one night weekend fling, she's supposed to come back and meet him, and she comes back with drugs in her suitcase accidentally, and he just doesn't have time to deal with that shit. So he's really mean to her. And then a couple of years later, he feels bad about it. So he brings her back to Italy through nefarious means and is ready to be with her. But he needs to marry a nice Italian girl, a purebred Italian girl that his family agrees with, and not the hot, spunky, I believe she's Australian, if I'm not mistaken. And so he asks her to be his mistress. Dear Lord, I hate that trope. Because he needs to have nice, happy Italian babies and not the one that he wants to have. And he's very controlling. He is verbally abusive sometimes. But apparently his Italian charm and sexy body makes up for everything. Still wouldn't bring him home to mama. Then, oh, dig doggity dig dog, I got Reaper from Torpedo Inc. from Judgment Road by Christine Feehan. I don't talk about this series enough. I've only read the first 2 books. I'm reading the 3rd one in September. That's my plan. But I wanted to bring this up because these books are sexy as hell. They're considered paranormal because all of the members of this biker gang, they were experimented on as children. They were taught sexual perversions to get information out of people. And so he doesn't like to be touched or touch anyone. And then he meets Anya, who he thinks might be a spy for a different biker club, for a different motorcycle club. But he's finally met someone that he wants to touch and to touch him. And so in these books, there is an element of fated mates. It's not official because they're not a shifter or anything. Their powers are mental usually, or like healing powers or truth powers or premonition. Like they have those kind of mental powers as well as all the sex skills they got taught as children, which that's so much fun. But he's a pretty bad dude. And even though their biker club actually fights against other biker clubs who do sex trafficking in Sea Haven and other parts of the country, I still wouldn't bring this guy home to mama because he's a bit dark, he's a bit edgy. But this is fun stuff, man. This series, again, I've only read the first 2, but they're super sexy. I've always loved Christine Feehan's smut. And if you like paranormal romance and you like biker romances, you might want to check this book out. But I won't be bringing Reaper home to mama. All right, now I got 2 historical bad boys. Okay. These are the ones that it's a little bit lighter about. Specifically, the first one I'm going to talk about. I think that he just hides his goodness, whereas the other guy, he really does have some issues and needs some therapy. But first, I'm going to surprise some people and say that one of my anti-boyfriends is actually Sebastian St. Vincent from The Devil in Winter. This guy is a real prick, okay? Along the lines of our friend Carter, who started this all out, he starts one of our meetings with him. The book before this, he assaults her best friend and threatens to rape her if she won't marry him and give him all her money because he needs it. Because he's been a rake and a renegade and has wasted his family's money, and now he needs money. And Evie needs a husband so that she can have independence because her father is dying and her family is keeping her away from him, and she needs someone who can overrule them. Evie is also being abused by her family pretty horribly, and they're trying to force her to marry her cousin. And so she makes the bold move to ask Sebastian to marry her because she knows he doesn't give a crap about her. and will let her do what she wants, or she hopes so. But not only does he then marry her, he then forbids her to go to the one place that she married him to go to. Sebastian, we know that he, has a ooey goodness in the center, but his selfishness takes a long time to get worked out, and it's only with Evie that he's able to fix that, which a lot of our guys, that's how it is, But I still want to bring him home to Mama, because I wouldn't like to explain that, oh yeah, this is the one you heard about at Christmas who assaulted my friend. Not great. Not great. And then the last one I want to talk about is Christopher Argens, who is the epitome of tortured, sexy hero. He's fabulous. I love this book. But again, Christopher is a little bit handsy, and he's supposed to murder our heroine, Millie. And each time he tries to kill her, he ends up almost having sex with her instead. One of the times it's consensual, and one of the times he gets pretty close to non-consensual situation. Also, he doesn't know how to properly have sex. He doesn't like to be touched when he's having sex. And he watched his mother be raped and murdered. So he's got some other hang-ups about sex as well. And he's a hitman. At the beginning of this book, he's a hitman. He's supposed to kill Millie. So I wouldn't be bringing that home to Mama. Even though after some therapy and sweet, sweet loving, he cleans up his act a little bit. So there you go. All right. This was a weird video. I know. It was 100% the purpose so I could talk about Untouchable by Sam Moriano, which I'm going to point to again. Holy shit, read this book if you like dark romance and you like some twisted boys and you also like strong females, because that's the thing I want to stress again. Had I read this book before I made my book girlfriends, Zoe Ellis, who I'm still hoping that that's her name because I always remember the men's names, but I'm in her point of view. That's the thing. This entire book is her point of view, which most of these books switch POVs. So you get to see inside the mind of the guy who's doing that. And in the case of this, especially because he's a psychopath, and if we had been in his point of view at all, I think it would make us understand too much about him, and it would have given away a lot of secrets that Zoe spends the book trying to draw out from him. So it needs to be suspenseful. It needs to be from her point of view. But she is so brave and never gets hopeless, because I felt that while reading it. You feel hopeless because you're like, man, please don't give in and love this guy. Like, I was honestly anxious. I was like, just hate him. Like, just hate him and find a way to get away from him and beat it all. But the way that it all works out, I really liked it. This is also a long book. It's almost 500 pages. And I love that because I feel like so many KU books, the authors shortchange themselves, whether to get the book out faster or because they think they're writing a complete story with only 250 pages. This book couldn't have been any shorter, and I would have loved if it was even another 100 pages because they talked through so many things. I'm going to stop now. You know me, when I get on a gushy train, we could ride it forever. But there you go. These are some of my anti-book boyfriends. I do not want to bring them home to Mama, if you can't tell. But I had fun reading them, and they're some of my favorite books in the years that they were read. And I hope that you will check them out if you want some guys that you love to hate, because you're definitely going to do that when you're reading those. So thank you so much for watching this. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye!